All right, directly in front of us is the flag of the Republic of Vietnam, which is better known as South Vietnam. If we go down the stairs, you'll see a flag that says POW-MIA. POW stands for Prisoners of War. MIA stands for Missing in Action. There's still about 1,600 unaccounted for, still considered MIA. If you were killed in action, that's known as KIA. This is a banner just welcoming everybody home. And that's one thing that Vietnam veterans always do when they see each other. They tell them, welcome home. So we're entering the basement now. There's some miscellaneous things here about the Vietnam Syndrome that describes Ronald Reagan's speech and when he talked about it, and things that were going on in the 60s, talking about the domino theory and why we were in Vietnam. We also talk about the culture, the anti-war culture, to, all the protests that were going on against the war. Not entirely on college campuses, but that's where a lot of it began. We have a few posters over here. If you walk over this way, please. This was a Volkswagen minivan decorated in psychedelic colors. Jimi Hendrix. Posters, anti-war posters. I hate war because I'm scared. Okay. And then this poster is an anti-war poster. So this is calling the protesters that are anti-war chickens. So it's anti-war. Okay. One thing about Vietnam veterans is for about 45 years, most of us didn't talk about it a whole lot. And now many of us would like to talk about it to the point that we won't shut up. And about half of us seem to write books. So there's lots of books available written by local veterans. We'll into the main gallery now. We'll start on this side. We have the U.S. Army flag. This is the complete history of the U.S. Army. It's also good for workouts. But this is everything from pre-Revolutionary War up until 2004. So if you really want to know, there it is. This is a helmet that belonged to a local veteran, David Hall. And he was wearing this in Vietnam, and he took a bullet right through here, and it came out over here. Now, the fortunate thing is that he had a very small hit. This is a helmet liner. All helmets have a helmet liner. There are always two pieces. You'll see the same holes in the liner. But because this is adjusted for a very small head, it just scratched the top of his head as it went by. So it's a very lucky day for him. You want to see how heavy one of these is? That you wore one of those every day, all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Pretty heavy, huh?
It is.
Yes. And in here, just miscellaneous photographs and stuff that some of the veterans have loaned to us. On the top shelf here, you see sea rations. Sea rations were used by the guys in the field. I was in a base in Da Nang, so I didn't have to eat a whole lot of sea rations. We did have it occasionally. But I've had guys in here talking to me that tell me in their 1 year in Vietnam, they had 2 hot meals. The rest of the time they ate sea rations because they were always in the field. This picture was taken by a local veteran by the name of Ray Rios. He would normally be in that spot right there, but he was behind the camera. So, and as we move on down here, there's a U.S. Air Force flag. This is kind of interesting. This is something I did not know existed. This was worn in the flight jackets by pilots in Vietnam. And basically, in English, right here, it says, I'm an American citizen, I need help. And the crux of the whole matter is the last line says, if you help me, my government will reward you. So basically, we'll pay to help get you back. But this is translated into all these different languages. Chinese, Laotian, Cambodian, they're all in here. Now, of course, this assumes that whoever finds you, or whoever you find, can not only speak the language, but can read it. And that's 2 different skills. Anybody can speak the language, but a lot of these people are uneducated, and a lot of them could not read the written language. So this kind of made an assumption. In here is another version of that. This is called a area pointy talkie. And it's the same thing. You have an English phrase down one side of the page, and then you have a Laotian and a Cambodian and a Thai out beside it. Again, you have to point to the English phrase, and then they could read it out to the side. So we had the audacity to call it a pointy talkie. So it's kind of not politically correct. This is a POW bracelet. A lot of people wore these in the 70s. They would sponsor, or they would have a POW that they wore that in memory of all the time. And that actually belongs to one of the board members here at
Did
the
your
museum.
mom have one?
No, not that I don't
Yeah.
recognize it.
I remember those very well.
No. This is a gentleman who actually ended up retiring as a Steve Ritchie. He was a captain at this time, but he ended up retiring as a general. He is considered to be the last ace. And an ace is someone that shot down 5 enemy aircraft. And he is officially recorded as doing that, and is the last person that is recorded as doing that.
So that's where Ace came from.
Yes. Down here, miscellaneous things that have been loaned to us are actually donated by Coleman, who is a local veteran who actually works right across the street. And you'll see a rescue mirror here. It's got a hole in the middle so you can hold it up to your eye and flash as a rescue plane was flying over. You have a little flare gun back here, and just various other things. And I think the pointy talkie was his as well. But I had mentioned some numbers. The war by statistics, basically there were 58,000 people killed in Vietnam. 2,500 of them Navy, 14,000 of them Marines, 38,000 Army, 7 in the Coast Guard, and 2,500 in the Air Force. And to this day, there are still 1,626 considered to be unaccounted for or MIA. And there was officially 725 POWs, 65 died in captivity, 660 were returned.
What would be your explanation to why so many more Army versus Marine Corps?
Well, in proportion, actually, the Marines only had 14% of all of the people stationed in Vietnam. The Army had 67% of all the forces there.
Okay.
So there was a total of 2,100,000 that served on the ground in Vietnam. So that it was disproportional in numbers because the Army was drafting people. Everybody else, all the rest of these services are pretty much volunteers. A few got drafted into the Marines. But there was actually a higher percentage of Marines that were killed than of Army, when you looked at,
Yes.
the ratios.
Okay.
So that's the numbers. Where are we on time?